At the beginning, the heroine, Lu Ran, appears doing what you see now, and we hear her voice saying that she will not accept the life her family has drawn for her. And if they are going to bury her alive, then let them bury her dead. But at that moment, her uncle's wife and daughter burst into the room and save Lu Ran at the last second. The two women panic, fearing that Lu Ran may have lost her life, and her cousin, Lu Xian, screams that they had already received a high dowry from the groom's family, and that she cannot marry that backward and cruel villager. She says she doesn't want to ruin her life. Then she pours a large amount of alcohol over Lu Ran's body and asks her mother to tell everyone that Lu Ran was drunk. Together, they carry her out of the room and tell everyone that she passed out from drinking, then place her on a cart and hand her over to the men. Lu Ran wakes up to find herself on the cart being pulled by that repulsive man, and she thanks God that she is still alive. She then tells us that after the death of her parents, her aunt and her aunt's husband pulled her out of university and ended her education. They sold her off to one of the uneducated villagers, a blacksmith known for his extreme cruelty. He even had a daughter and wanted a new wife to replace the one who had run away from his abuse, in exchange for the dowry that was paid to her family. The man stops to relieve himself in the forest, and Lu Ran seizes the opportunity to escape, jumping off the cart and running. She enters a small hut seeking shelter, only to be shocked to find a gang that kidnaps children. She tries to run but ends up tied up with them. Fortunately, Lu Ran uses a knife to cut through her restraints and helps all the children escape. Lu Ran runs, with a young girl named Shanshan following closely behind her, terrified and trying to stay as close to Lu Ran as possible for protection. Lu Ran hugs her tightly and tries to shield her behind the trees. Suddenly, our hero Xingfang appears from behind the trees. Lu Ran immediately rushes at him and begins to hit him fiercely, shouting for little Shanshan to run back to her family right away. But instead, Shanshan runs into the man's arms, clinging to him and telling Lu Ran that this is her father, not one of the kidnappers. She then tells her father that Lu Ran is the woman who helped her escape, as he too had mistaken Lu Ran for one of the gang members. The three of them walk together, and Xingfang politely apologizes to Lu Ran, explaining that he thought she was part of the gang. He thanks her for helping his daughter, and Lu Ran thanks him in return, telling him she's going to leave. But suddenly, Shanshan clutches her stomach and cries out in pain, nearly fainting. Xingfang and Lu Ran both rush her to the hospital, but the doctor informs them that she's perfectly fine. It becomes clear that she had faked her illness just to keep Lu Ran close. When Xingfang returns after paying the doctor's fees, he overhears his daughter asking Lu Ran to stay with her because no one in the world loves her except her father. Lu Ran smiles and tells her that she now has another person who loves her and considers her a close friend. Xingfang smiles, and the three of them leave together to safely take the little girl back to her father's home. Shanshan stands in front of Lu Ran and asks her father to take Lu Ran home with them because she wants her to stay. But Xingfang gently tells her that it's not possible. Lu Ran speaks up and asks Xingfang if she could stay the night at their house, just until morning, so she can figure out a way to leave the village. Shanshan agrees immediately, while Xingfang hesitates. Just then, a woman with her hair tied back appears, checking on Shanshan and asking where she had been. When Lu Ran sees the woman, she recalls having seen someone who looked just like her standing with one of the gang members, but she tries to convince herself it wasn't the same person. The woman overhears that Lu Ran will be staying at Xingfang's house for the night, and she firmly objects, saying that he is a married man now and a stranger cannot stay with him in the same house. Xingfang calmly responds that he will take Lu Ran to her house and return. The woman, who turns out to be his brother's wife, tells him she'll wait for him to come back. After she leaves, Lu Ran politely asks Xingfang once more to let her stay for just one night, promising she won't cause any trouble and will leave early in the morning. Xingfang looks at his daughter and finds himself unable to deny what this little girl wants. The three arrive at Xingfang's house, and before Lu Ran can even speak, she's shocked as her aunt and the aunt's husband storm into the home. The woman yells, demanding to know where Lu Ran is, loudly announcing that the whole village saw Lu Ran walking from their house to her husband's home. The man who had been pulling the cart earlier steps forward, and when Lu Ran sees him and realizes he's the groom, she curses her luck for having come to his house with her own 2 feet. She quickly runs inside, grabs a handful of flour, throws it on her face, messes up her hair, and comes out pretending to be the ghost of their daughter who died that morning. Her foolish aunt and uncle actually believe her and run away in panic. Lu Ran looks at the men and tells him that she does not agree to this marriage and had been forced into it, but she will return the dowry. His wife then scoffs and tells Lu Ran she's a fool, that he's not the groom, but her own husband. The actual groom is his younger brother. Lu Ran stares around in confusion until Xingfang speaks up and reveals that he is the groom. Xingfang's mother yells from behind him, shouting at Lu Ran and saying that she only resembles her family in greed and that if she's after money, then they don't want her as her son's wife. She demands that Lu Ran return the dowry and leave, but little Shanshan rushes to hug Lu Ran and begs everyone not to take her away. Xingfang's mother tries to pull the girl away, but in the struggle, Shanshan loses consciousness. Xingfang immediately picks her up and runs to the room, with Lu Ran following behind. Lu Ran quickly realizes that Shanshan is faking again, just like she did earlier in the morning. She loudly tells Xingfang that if the girl doesn't wake up, they'll have to take her to the doctor, who will cut her open to wake her up. At once, Shanshan springs up and says she's fine, but she just doesn't want Lu Ran to leave. Xingfang tells her that he's with her and will always stay by her side. Then he steps out to reassure everyone outside. Meanwhile, Shanshan looks at Lu Ran and pleads with her not to leave, saying she now considers her a mother, better than her uncle's wife. Lu Ran gently asks her about her real mother, and the girl replies that she doesn't have one. They had paid a woman to come and pretend to be her mother so her father could go to work and earn money all the time. Lu Ran begins to feel that Xingfang's brother's wife is a cruel woman and tries to calm the child. She softly asks if the woman treats her well, but the little girl answers that she treats her terribly and always tells her that there's no place for her in their home. Then Shanshan begs Lu Ran to become her mother and protect her. Lu Ran gently tells her to sleep for now, promising that she will go wash the flour off her face and come right back. Outside, Xingfang's mother speaks to him, insisting that he should look for another bride, because this girl isn't suitable. But Xingfang tries to calm her, telling her that Shanshan has already grown attached to Lu Ran. He returns to Shanshan's room and finds Lu Ran still there. He asks her to stay the night, saying he won't allow her to go out at such a late hour. Lu Ran, however, is afraid and suspects he won't let her leave at all. Xingfang then asks her if she had ever discussed the marriage with her father and mother. She replies that they're not her real parents, they're her aunt and her aunt's husband. And they never asked for her opinion. The one who was supposed to get married was actually Lucian, but they had called her while she was at the university dorm in the city, telling her to come immediately because her aunt was sick. When she arrived, they told her she was getting married and locked her inside the house, not allowing her to return to the university. Xingfang looks at her with sympathy and says he's sorry for what happened, assuring her that if she wants to go back to university, he'll let her go. He had no idea about any of this. Lu Ran asked him, if he didn't know, then why had he paid so much money to buy a woman to be his wife? Xingfang replied that he had no intention of buying any woman, but that he was not a young man, and the girl was not a child either. That's why he had wanted to offer a generous dowry to the bride, so she would feel her worth and know that she wasn't just a servant to him and his daughter. Lu Ran was surprised by what she heard and asked him if that meant he didn't hit his wife so badly that she ran away, as the villagers claimed. Xingfang told her he had never laid a hand on a woman in his life and could never do such a thing. She then asked why his wife had run away, and he replied that he didn't have a wife to begin with. Shanshan was actually his brother's daughter. His brother and his wife had died in a car accident when Shanshan was just a little girl, and since then, he had raised her as his own daughter. Lu Ran asked why his brother and sister-in-law didn't care for the girl. Xingfang explained that his sister-in-law never liked her, believed she brought misfortune to the family since her parents had died shortly after her birth, and even blamed the girl for her own inability to have children. She treated Shanshan poorly. That was why he had been looking for a wife, to take care of the girl while he focused on his work. Lu Ran then asked him to let her stay at his house for a while until she could sort things out. She didn't want to go back to university, since her aunt and the aunt's husband would surely find her there. She also asked him to convince everyone that they were actually married, so she could leave safely. In return, she promised to help him take care of Shanshan. Then, she pulled out the dowry money he had paid and told him that she had managed to steal it from her aunt that morning. But Xingfang told her to keep the money, because he had also made a mistake in the way he chose his wife. He didn't want the money back, and she was welcome to stay as long as she needed. He would make sure that no one in his family would bother her again. Lu Ran thanked him for his kindness. And when he left the room, she looked at Shanshan with a smile and said she would stay a little longer, for her, because she had grown attached to the girl and hoped her future would be better than her own. Lu Ran went to take a shower, and by mistake, Xingfang entered the bathroom, finding her inside. Before he could escape, his mother arrived, forcing him to stay hidden in the bathroom with Lu Ran. His mother, thinking he was alone, told him he should find another wife, that this girl wasn't right for him and that they could easily replace her. She reminded him that they owed everything to his brother's wife, since his brother was infertile and yet she endured their life together. But they owed Lu Ran nothing. Xingfang felt deeply embarrassed and asked his mother to leave the front of the bathroom, promising they'd talk later. After she left, Xingfang looked at Lu Ran and saw she was only wrapped in a towel. He grew flustered and quickly left. Once out, he poured cold water over himself in an attempt to calm down, thinking about how she had held him that morning. She was the first woman to enter his life and come this close to him, ever. Xingfang returned to the room and told Lu Ran he would sleep on the floor, apologizing because his mother was standing outside and he had no way to leave. Shortly after, his mother and his brother's wife came close to eavesdrop. Xingfang, embarrassed and unsure what to do, told Lu Ran he would have to shake the bed a little so they'd think the two were together. Then they'd leave. He apologized again. In the morning, his brother's wife woke up to the sound of Xingfang hammering into the wood. She asked what he was doing so early, and he told her he was building a dressing table for Lu Ran. The woman reacted with obvious jealousy, saying that this new bride was certainly getting spoiled. Lu Ran watched him from behind the window, smiling at how handsome he looked. But her smile quickly faded as worry crept back into her heart. What if his kindness toward her was only for Shanshan's sake, and not what it seemed? She feared he might be just like the rest of his family. When she stepped outside to ask what he was doing, he told her he was building a dressing table for her. Lu Ran smiled. Then Xingfang pulled out some money and handed it to her, asking her to keep it. She told him she still had the dowry money, but he explained that this was different. This was for the house, and for her and Shanshan in case they needed anything. Lu Ran felt he was truly a nobleman and asked if he was going to have breakfast. He replied that he had a sandwich with him and would head to work since he wouldn't have time to sit and eat. He also told her that his mother and his brother's wife would ask her about the dowry and asked her to say she had already given it to him. Luran bid him goodbye with gratitude and reassured him not to worry about Shanshan, she would take care of her. Luran went into the kitchen to prepare breakfast, but her brother-in-law's wife followed her in. She claimed that her husband had fallen while carrying Luran yesterday, and now they owed money to the wedding band. She began throwing sharp words at her, but Luran calmly said that she had seen her just yesterday morning. The woman dodged the comment and insisted she'd only seen her near the hospital in the evening. Luran realized the woman was trying to cover something up, so she played along, saying perhaps she had mistaken her for someone else. Then she told her that Xingfang had already received the dowry. But the woman snapped back that she had seen him give Luran money that very morning. Luran calmly raised the kitchen knife and waved it in front of the woman, asking what exactly she wanted. The woman backed off, frightened, and said there was some meat in the fridge, perhaps Luran could cook it for them today. Luran went ahead and prepared the meal, but as soon as she did, Xingfang's mother shouted at her for cooking the entire portion, saying that they usually prepared much less than that. Everyone sat down to eat, and Luran asked who covered the household expenses. Xingfang's mother replied that Xingfang did, since his brother didn't work and Xingfang was responsible for everything. Then Shanshan's grandmother snapped at the little girl when she asked for a second piece of meat, making Shanshan cry and run out of the room. Luran stood up and firmly scolded the woman, calling them people without morals. How could they stop a child from eating when it was her own father who brought money into the house? She scooped a generous portion of food and meat for Shanshan and told them she would be giving it to her. She added that her husband was the one who had given her the money for the house, and that she wouldn't be giving them a single coin. She would be handling the expenses herself. Then she pointed at the sister-in-law and reminded Xingfang's mother that it was she who told her to cook all the meat in the first place. Luran went out to find Shanshan and gave her the plate of meat with tenderness. As she sat there, her thoughts drifted to Xingfang, who spent his whole day working with nothing but a simple sandwich. She decided to prepare a proper meal for him and set out to find where his workshop was so she could bring it to him. Meanwhile, Shanshan left the house to play with some children. While Luran was out looking for Xingfang's workshop, she came upon a group of village children bullying Shanshan. They mocked her for being motherless and an orphan, and even hit her. Luran rushed to rescue Shanshan, shouting at the boy. But the child arrogantly snapped back, telling her no one knew who Shanshan's mother was. Luran yelled at him that she was her mother. The boy stepped forward to hit Shanshan again, but Luran grabbed him, pushed him to the ground, and smeared a handful of mud over his mouth to silence him. He screamed that he would tell his father and that this wouldn't end well. Luran returned home with Shanshan and found Xingfang's unemployed brother sitting idly, doing nothing. She told him to go to Xingfang's workplace and inform him and his co-workers that she had prepared food for them, since she didn't know where the workshop was. He stood up and told her he would go right away. At that moment, the father of the bully arrived with a group of men, yelling at Luran for what she had done to his son. Just then, Xingfang arrived with his worker friends, and a fight broke out between the two groups, shouting and blows exchanged. When the bully's father realized he was no match for Xingfang and his men, he backed down and apologized to Xingfang. Then he turned to Luran and apologized to her as well. Luran told him to have his son apologize to her daughter. The man responded by kicking his son in the backside and ordering him to apologize to the girl. Then Luran raised her voice and declared that she was the girl's mother and would never allow anyone to bully her again. Xingfang looked at Luran and asked her if she was satisfied with the apology or if he should keep beating the men. Luran smiled and told him she was satisfied, so the men left. Xingfang turned to Luran and asked her to explain everything that had happened. She told him everything in detail, and he felt grateful for the way she had stood up for his daughter. He truly saw her as a mother figure now. He then turned to Shanshan and apologized for not being there when it all happened. But Shanshan told him she wasn't upset, because he worked hard to bring them delicious food and money, and today, her mother had been with her to protect her. After that, Luran told Xingfang she would prepare food for him and the workers. Xingfang then looked at his mother, his brother, and his brother's wife and asked why none of them defended Luran, or even Shanshan. They acted innocent and said they were too weak. What could they possibly do against so many men? Xingfang, however, felt truly grateful that Luran had stood up for his daughter in front of all those men, and never backed down. Everyone sat down to eat, and Luran overheard that Xingfang and the workers were heading to the city to pick up some supplies. She politely asked if he could take her along, as she needed to collect a few things from her university dorm. Xingfang told her he didn't mind at all. Afterward, she went to wash the dishes. Xingfang followed her to help and asked if his brother's wife had upset her. Luran told him it was just family drama, and he didn't need to worry about it. She also apologized for the chaos she had caused in the house, but he told her not to apologize, she had only been defending his daughter. As Luran tried to stand up with the dishes, she almost tripped, but Xingfang quickly caught her. At that moment, his friend walked in, misunderstood the scene, and awkwardly mentioned that he had installed the fan in their room, then quickly left. Xingfang stepped away from Luran and explained that he had asked his friend to buy the fan for her because he figured she wouldn't be able to stand the heat in the room, especially since they couldn't open the window at night with his mother always watching them. Luran thanked him, telling him he was thoughtful, kind, and caring to everyone around him. Xingfang drove Luran to the city, then handed her the car and the key, asking her to call him once she finished collecting her things. As Lu Ran approached the dorm, she heard a commotion among some men arguing. She walked up to one of them and asked what was going on. The men explained that he was trying to transport oxygen tanks to the hospital, but the driver of the truck was demanding a high fee, and he couldn't afford it. Then, noticing her car, he asked if she could help transport the tanks and said he would pay her for the delivery. Lu Ran happily agreed but asked that he also consider hiring her regularly for delivery work. The man took her to his office, and she discovered that his pay was higher than what Xingfang and his co-workers earned at the workshop. She was delighted, but the man in charge of the oxygen tanks informed her that there would be an insurance fee, which he would refund once he confirmed the deliveries had arrived safely. The fee was somewhat high. Later, Xingfang and his co-workers returned, and Lu Ran told them about the delivery job opportunity, without mentioning the insurance fee, as she had paid it herself using the dowry money Xingfang had previously returned to her. The men were delighted with the work opportunity, as they were in need of money, and they began working all day. Xingfang looked at Lu Ran with pride. She was strong and responsible. He decided to take her back to the village, and during the drive, Lu Ran fell asleep. When they arrived, Xingfang went to carry her, but as he got closer, he noticed a bit of dust on her face. Nervously, he brushed it off. Lu Ran unconsciously grabbed his hand to rest her head on it, leaving Xingfang flustered. When she suddenly opened her eyes, Xingfang jolted and hit his head on the car door. Lu Ran smiled at his reaction and stepped out of the car, but then suddenly fainted. Xingfang quickly caught her in his arms, saying she must be experiencing low blood sugar from not eating. Everyone returned home and began eating. During the meal, Lu Ran suggested that Xingfang's brother finally take up a job, working with the men delivering oxygen tanks, and that he would be paid daily. But his shrewish wife lashed out at Xingfang, saying he shouldn't pay his own brother the same wages he gave the other workers. Lu Ran grew angry, pointing out that his brother didn't even work and relied entirely on Xingfang for money. She stormed inside, and Xingfang followed her. Inside, Lu Ran told him that if his brother agreed to work with the delivery men, the wages would actually be higher than what they had earned that day. Xingfang's brother's wife, however, was eavesdropping from behind the door. Lu Ran then also admitted to Xingfang that she had paid the insurance fees to the delivery men using the dowry money he had returned to her, and that soon, she would be settling in the city and leaving the village. Xingfang told her to do whatever she wanted, he wouldn't stop her from anything. Then he thanked her for helping him, even though she wasn't obligated to do so. But Lu Ran told him she now considered herself his wife, and that meant she had a responsibility to support him. Besides, she had earned a share of the money too. Xingfang smiled at her words, but his smile faded when he mentioned that the men responsible for transporting the oxygen tanks was the of the village's party secretary, Hong Yang, and he feared that if they took the job, that young men might cause them trouble. Lu Ran told him not to worry about anything, that if the men even tried to stand in their way, she'd call the police on him. Xingfang reassured her not to carry the burden alone, he would handle everything himself. The next day, Xingfang found his worker friends gathered at his house along with their wives. They said the men truly wanted the job, but they didn't think it was fair that Xingfang should take the largest share just because he owned the vehicle, while they were paid only a small daily wage. Of course, it was clear that Xingfang's brother's wife was the one who had told the women about the arrangement. Xingfang stood up, angry, and told them it was his car, and if they didn't want to work with him, then they were welcome to stay home, unemployed. But the men quickly surrounded him, insisting they were ready to work with him and would accept whatever wage he offered. The men set out to deliver the oxygen tanks, but suddenly, Hong Yang appeared with a group of thugs and blocked their path, furious that they had taken over his son's job. At that moment, Lu Ran was with the workers, while Xingfang had gone to speak with the young man's father, who happened to be the deputy head of the party. Xingfang explained that it was Hong Yang's son who had willingly abandoned the job, and now he was stirring up trouble because someone else had taken it. Just then, one of Xingfang's friends rushed in and informed him of what Hong Yang was doing. Xingfang immediately hurried to the scene and found the young man about to strike Lu Ran. Without hesitation, Xingfang intervened and beat the men down fiercely. The father then struck his own son and scolded him for causing problems, ordering him to come with him immediately. Later, the group gathered to celebrate, buying drinks to mark the occasion. The friend who had gone to get Xingfang leaned in and told Lu Ran that Xingfang had been extremely worried when he heard what was happening. He had told them to run quickly to reach her as fast as possible, but pretended he had only shown up by coincidence. Xingfang, embarrassed, got up and went to the bathroom, while Lu Ran smiled to herself, touched by his concern and subtle care. Afterward, Xingfang took Lu Ran on the motorcycle, seated in front of him, and they returned to the village together. By the time they arrived, the effects of the alcohol began to show on Lu Ran. Xingfang helped her to bed, but as he did, Lu Ran clung to him tightly and began to flirt with him, saying she had once thought he was a beast, only to discover how handsome and noble he truly was. Xingfang grew nervous, his heartbeat quickening. He tried to gently lay her down on the bed, but she pulled him down with her, causing him to fall on top of her. As Lu Ran leaned in, lips just inches away, ready to kiss him, Xingfang felt as if his heart might burst. He desperately wanted to resist, afraid of doing something she'd regret when she woke up, but he couldn't move. At that very moment, little Shanshan entered the room and told him she was scared and wanted to sleep beside Lu Ran. Xingfang breathed a deep sigh of relief, gently placed the child in the bed next to Lu Ran, and watched them both fall asleep together, his eyes full of tenderness. Lu Ran, even in sleep, reached out and grasped the edge of Xingfang's shirt, sending a new wave of tension and confusion through him over how close they had come to something neither of them could take back. The next morning, the workers and their wives arrived, requesting to work with Xingfang again that day. Xingfang went inside and began preparing contracts for the workers to ensure everyone's rights and responsibilities were clearly defined. When Lu Ran woke up and saw him working, she asked what he was doing. Xingfang consulted her about everything and even asked for her opinion regarding the workers' wages, reminding her that this was her project too. But Lu Ran told him she wasn't concerned about such matters because she trusted him completely and knew he would handle things well. Outside, Xingfang's sister-in-law approached the women once again, trying to convince them that the wages were too low. This time, however, the women turned on her, angrily reminding her how she had nearly cost their husbands their jobs the last time, and now she wanted a share of their wages in return for helping them negotiate a raise. Xingfang heard the commotion and came out to calm things down. Though he knew she was in the wrong and resented seeing others succeed, he tried to defuse the situation diplomatically. He asked his brother's wife to step inside and stay out of his business. After he walked away, the woman began to cry and scream loudly, claiming that she now felt like she was no different from Lu Ran in this house. But Xingfang refused to let her get away with it this time. He confronted her, reminding her that he had once entrusted her with caring for little Shanshan, and yet the girl had always been sick, hungry, and exhausted under her care. She had never truly looked after the child. And now, she was conspiring with the workers behind Lu Ran's back. When his mother arrived and heard what was going on, Xingfang told her everything, that his sister-in-law had made a deal with the workers to take a cut from their wages if they pressured him to increase the pay slightly. Shocked and furious, his mother immediately chased after her daughter-in-law to punish her for such disgraceful behavior. Even her husband began scolding her and sided with his brother. Furious, she shouted at him that she wanted a divorce. He calmly replied that he had no problem divorcing her at all. After the woman stormed out, Xingfang's mother stood before Lu Ran and told her that ever since she arrived, problems had started erupting in the house. But Lu Ran asked her to think logically. Before she ever came here, she had believed that Xingfang was a cruel man who beat his wife. That's why the wife ran away and left her daughter. But the truth was the complete opposite. Offended, the older woman demanded to know who could have said such things. Lu Ran revealed it was Xingfang's sister-in-law who had spread those rumors so that no woman would ever agree to marry him. Then Lu Ran pulled out some money and told her it was given to her by Xingfang to manage the household expenses. She reassured her that she trusted her and would hand over the money, on one condition, that she stays away from her daughter-in-law who keeps causing trouble. The mother then reassured Lu Ran that the house would remain as it is, because her daughter-in-law was just speaking nonsense, and there would be no divorce. Shortly after, the sister-in-law returned, having changed her mind about getting divorced. The next morning, Xingfang went looking for Lu Ran and found her preparing his lunch before he left for work. She packed it neatly in a container. Though she wasn't truly his wife, she had started to feel responsible and comfortable in the home. Xingfang took the food with a smile, feeling a deep sense of peace as he looked at Lu Ran and little Shanshan. He finally felt stable, knowing he could rely on Lu Ran to take care of Shanshan, his mother, and his brother. For the first time, he felt supported in facing the hardships of life. Later, as Lu Ran was preparing lunch, the sister-in-law snuck into the kitchen and added some medicine to the food, hoping to ruin the taste in front of everyone. When Lu Ran tasted it, she felt sharp pain in her stomach and ended up vomiting. Xingfang's mother assumed Lu Ran was pregnant and became overjoyed. She rushed into the kitchen, eager to take over cooking so Lu Ran could rest. Meanwhile, the sister-in-law was furious that her plan had backfired so badly. When Xingfang returned from work, he immediately noticed how exhausted Lu Ran looked. He knew for certain she wasn't pregnant, and before she could collapse, he carried her straight to the hospital. There, the nurse informed him that she was only suffering from mild poisoning caused by a specific type of medication. On their way back home, they spotted his sister-in-law sneaking off somewhere. Curious, they followed her, only to discover that she was at the herbalist's shop buying herbs for abortion, foolishly assuming Lu Ran was actually pregnant, even though she herself had been the one to spike Lu Ran's food. When Lu Ran returned home, the older woman secretly added the herbs to her soup. However, the herbalist had made a mistake and had given her herbs that increased physical desire instead. Soon after, Lu Ran began to feel hot and dizzy, barely conscious, yet she tried to get closer to Xingfang. Xingfang, confused and worried, attempted to push her away, but she clung to him like glue. He asked her, startled, what she was doing. Hadn't she said their marriage wasn't real? Unbeknownst to them, the sister-in-law was eavesdropping just outside the door. Lu Ran, however, told him she didn't care about whether the marriage was real or not, she wanted him. Xingfang struggled to resist her, telling her that even under normal circumstances, it was hard enough for him to keep his distance. He didn't want things to happen this way. Noticing that Lu Ran was nearly unconscious, he gently pulled away and quickly left the room, asking his mother if she had put anything strange in Lu Ran's food. She told him it was just soup, but he said he was worried and wanted to call a doctor. His brother offered to go instead and told Xingfang to stay by Lu Ran's side. Xingfang remained beside Lu Ran after the doctor examined her and said he couldn't explain what was happening. When Lu Ran woke up, she found herself tied with the bedsheet, to stop her from repeating her earlier behavior. Later, when Lu Ran came out to face the family, the sister-in-law exposed her, shouting that she and Xingfang weren't truly married. Xingfang's mother exploded, screaming that she wanted a grandchild and that Luran should leave the house immediately. Shanshan, hearing the shouting, ran into the room crying, shouting that Luran was her mother and she didn't want her to ever leave. Luran broke into tears, hugging Shanshan tightly, but eventually pulled away and left. Xingfang rushed after her, afraid she would leave him for good. Desperate, he asked her if she was going to leave now. Luran assured him she wasn't, she would stay with them. She just needed some fresh air. Then she told him she didn't trust the doctor his sister-in-law had brought. Xingfang believed her, and together with the others, they investigated the so-called doctor. To their shock, they discovered that he was actually the same herbalist the sister-in-law had visited the day before, pretending to be a doctor. They dragged him to the yard and questioned him, demanding to know what was going on. Terrified, the men confessed that Xingfang's sister-in-law had come to him asking for abortion herbs, but he had mistakenly given her a sexual stimulant instead. She was the one who had asked him to pretend he didn't know what was wrong with Luran. When Luran hears this, she immediately approaches the woman and asks her directly if she was the one who handed Shanshan over to that gang, because she had seen her with them. The woman confesses that she did, because the fortune teller had warned her that the child would bring ruin and death to their family. Everyone is stunned by the revelation, and Luran nearly hits her in rage, but Xingfang pulls her away, telling her not to waste their time on a sick, twisted woman like that. The following day, Luran played lovingly with Shanshan, and Xingfang watched them with a full heart, feeling, perhaps for the first time, that he truly had a family of his own. Later, he told Luran he would take her and Shanshan to the city to buy a few things. As promised, they went together, and Xingfang took them to a restaurant for a meal. While there, Luran spotted Lucian seated with Hongyang. It was clear they were romantically involved. Upon seeing them, Lucian approached Xingfang and warned him to be cautious of Luran, claiming she had tried to end her life just to avoid marrying him and calling her a bad person. But Xingfang knew the truth and ignored her words. Not getting the reaction she wanted, Lucian turned to threats, telling them not to get too comfortable about taking Hongyang's job, since he could easily punish them and stop the transport cars from taking them back to the village. But little Shanshan responded cheekily, saying they would spend the night in the city and even stuck out her tongue at her. Unbothered, Xingfang took Luran and Shanshan to his car to show them the new house he had found, where he planned to stay while working his new job, delivering gas cylinders away from the village. The house was beautiful and both Luran and Shanshan loved it. The two stepped out onto the balcony, which Luran also admired, but she slipped just before Xingfang could catch her. This time, though, he didn't let her fall. He held her tightly in his arms and didn't pull away or hide from his feelings like he always had before. Luran felt deeply happy to be close to him. Breaking the tender silence, she smiled and said that since the kitchen was already equipped, she would cook for him and wait for him to come home so they could have lunch together, just the three of them. Xingfang smiled and told her he would return quickly. But after Xingfang left, two men emerged and covered the faces of both Shanshan and Luran. However, they only took Luran, leaving Shanshan behind with a note. When Xingfang returned home and felt the strange quiet, he began searching for them, only to find Shanshan tied up, with a message beside her that read, "Your precious wife is with us. If you want her back, come to the old beer factory." Xingfang rushed to the location and found Hongyang there, Luran tied to a chair, and Lucian standing beside him. The men smirked, saying he was glad Xingfang came, and had some of his men hold him. Xingfang shouted at him, demanding to know what he wanted. Hongyang calmly replied that all he wanted was for Xingfang to give up ownership of the workshop he had recently opened. Without hesitation, Xingfang agreed and asked for the contract. And he signed the contract with no hesitation for even a second. Luran sat in stunned silence, shocked that he would give up everything so easily, just for her. Hongyang left, clearly pleased with himself. But before Lucian followed him, she grabbed a stick to hit Luran. Xingfang quickly shielded her with his own body, pulling her into his arms to protect her. At that moment, his friend arrived, and the girl fled the scene in fear. Still shaken, Luran begged Xingfang to show her his back, worried he might have been hurt while shielding her. But Xingfang didn't answer, he simply asked, his voice full of concern, whether she was alright or if anyone had hurt her. Luran burst into tears, asking him how he could give up his workshop so easily. Xingfang replied that he didn't care about anything else, she meant more to him than anything in the world. Luran cried harder, unable to believe he had given up his entire livelihood for her, and through her sobs, she apologized for being the cause of it all. Xingfang reassured her that none of it was her fault. He embraced her to calm her down, then gently lifted her up and carried her back home. Both returned home, and Luran quickly asked about Shanshan. Xingfang reassured her that Shanshan was with his friend, having a meal. Luran then asked him what had been going through his mind when he gave up his workshop so easily. Xingfang told her that he was the one who had built that workshop with his own hard work, and if he built it once, he could do it again. But if he had lost her because of it, he would never have forgiven himself. Deeply moved by his words, Luran asked him to take off his t-shirt so she could see his back. When he did, she saw a bruise across it. Xingfang felt her hand tremble as it touched his back, and he heard her quiet sobs. He gently held her by the shoulder, swore that he was fine, and told her to calm down. Then he said he had something important to do and promised to return quickly. Xingfang went to the party deputy's house, hoping to convince the man's son to return the workshop. But the son told him that the documents were legal, there were witnesses, and since Xingfang had stamped the contract himself, not even the police could help. Xingfang realized he had lost the workshop for good. He returned home, drinking, and filled with sorrow and anger, but at the same time, he thanked God that Lu Ran hadn't been harmed because of him. The next morning, Xingfang took Lu Ran to a new workshop. He told her it was even better than the last one, though it was rented, not owned. He asked her to support him, with the knowledge and skills she'd gained from her education and university, so they could grow the workshop together, expand the business, and eventually buy a new one. Lu Ran felt proud and immediately began offering him advice on how to attract clients and build a good name in the market. Meanwhile, Hongyang visited Xingfang's old workshop, only to find it deserted. None of the workers had stayed. They had all decided to leave and follow Xingfang. The next day, Xingfang met with a local company owner who was interested in collaborating with him. The men introduced Xingfang to a young man named Chan, a close friend of his, who would be working directly with him. Xingfang and Chan left the meeting together. At that same time, Lu Ran was walking home from the market. When Chan saw her from afar, he suddenly shouted her name and ran over to her, saying he hadn't seen her in years. It quickly became clear to Xingfang that Chan truly knew her from the past. Chan asked her what she had done about her marriage, explaining that he had unfortunately received her message too late, after her father had already arranged for her to marry a man from the village. Lu Ran grew visibly uneasy but tried to mask it with a laugh. She told him it was all in the past and that he had taken too long to receive her message anyway. Chan insisted that it wasn't too late. He said he knew a good lawyer who could help her divorce that disgusting man. Xingfang was shocked by his words, but Lu Ran simply laughed again and told Chan that her husband wasn't what he thought. He was actually a good man. Then she handed the grocery bags to Xingfang and, right in front of Chan, said that she had come to realize her husband was the best man she had ever known. When Chan realized Xingfang was her husband, he looked extremely embarrassed and immediately apologized, saying he hadn't known. He then handed her his business card, telling her to reach out if she ever needed anything. Xingfang felt relieved that Lu Ran hadn't told her old friend the truth, that their marriage wasn't real. Lu Ran, holding the card, told Xingfang she was glad he was working with Chan now, since Chan owned a wide network of companies in the city, which would definitely have a positive impact on their business. Xingfang felt a twinge of jealousy, even though he was genuinely happy about the collaboration. He couldn't help but ask her how she knew Chan. Lu Ran told him, simply, that Chan had been her friend since their school days. The next day, Chan visited Lu Ran at her new home, where she was staying for a while with Xingfang's mother. When he arrived, he told her he wanted to discuss a work opportunity. Xingfang's mother, sensing the need for privacy, took Shanshan inside, but soon returned quietly to eavesdrop. Lu Ran told Chan that she didn't interfere with her husband's business and that he was currently at the workshop. But Chan clarified that he wasn't there for her husband, he was there for her. He explained that after seeing her message, he went to her uncle's house, only to be told she had gotten married. He then asked if she had left university and gotten married just because he hadn't replied to her message in time. Lu Ran replied that she didn't marry just because he never responded. The matter had been much bigger than that. Chan said he understood that she was married now, but he still wanted to help her. He could even help her get a divorce. But Lu Ran firmly told him she didn't want a divorce. As she had said before, she had discovered that her husband was truly a wonderful man. As for her feelings toward Chan, she no longer admired him like she once had, and those emotions were completely gone. She asked him to maintain only a professional relationship with her husband, nothing more. Chan, unwilling to believe her, grabbed her hand. In that moment, Xingfang's mother stormed out, cane in hand, and struck Chan, demanding that he stay away from her son's wife. After Chan left, she harshly scolded Lu Ran, accusing her of being the one who invited him over and claiming she clearly hadn't been raised properly by her parents, who had abandoned her to be raised by her aunt. Unable to bear the humiliation, Lu Ran ran out in tears, haunted by the memory of her parents' death in the accident. When Xingfang returned home in the evening, he found his mother and little Shanshan, but Lu Ran wasn't there at that moment. Shanshan told him everything that had happened with Chan and also with his mother. Anger rose in Xingfang's chest. He shouted at his mother, then left the house immediately to search for Lu Ran everywhere. Eventually, he found her sitting alone on the curb in the street, crying. He sat down beside her and apologized. He told her that his mother had always been a kind and gentle woman, but after his father passed away and she had to carry the burden of raising him and his brother alone, she worked constantly to earn money and provide for them. Since then, her personality had hardened, but deep down, she was still a good woman. He asked Lu Ran to forgive her and come back home with him. Lu Ran didn't speak, remaining silent for a moment. Then, slowly, she stood up and told him they should go back home together. Later, at home, his mother asked whether Lu Ran was still upset with her. Xingfang simply told her to give Lu Ran space for the rest of the day. The next morning, Xingfang's mother found Lu Ran sitting quietly by herself. She approached and sat down beside her. Then, gently, she said she was sorry for what she had said the day before. She explained that she had only been angry when she saw that man holding Lu Ran's hand, and that she sometimes struggled to control her temper. But she wasn't holding any resentment toward her, and she kindly asked for forgiveness. Lu Ran looked at her, smiled softly, and told her that she had already forgiven her. Shengfang's mother smiled happily and told her she would be the one cooking today and wouldn't let Lu Ran stand in the kitchen or get tired again. Lu Ran smiled, touched by her words. Shengfang went to sign the contract with Chan, but Chan was furious. He told Shengfang that Lu Ran was an educated girl with a bright future at university, and now Shengfang had made her abandon her studies to become a stepmother to his daughter and a servant in his house, especially considering that Shengfang himself wasn't even educated. Shengfang responded calmly, saying that he didn't need anyone to speak on behalf of his wife's rights. If Lu Ran ever wanted to leave him and start a new life, he wouldn't stop her or stand in her way. But Chan insisted that she was clearly under pressure, scared of Shengfang, and unable to make her own decisions. He said that unless Shengfang divorced her, he wouldn't proceed with the contract. Without hesitation, Shengfang placed the papers down and told him he didn't want to work with him anyway. Then he walked away, burdened with sorrow. He had just lost the opportunity to work with the owner of one of the biggest companies in the city. As he walked, his thoughts lingered on Chan's words about Lu Ran. Was she truly happy with him? Was this incomplete life enough for her? He remembered how she once looked longingly at the university building as they walked through the city streets, and how just the night before, she had cried, saying she regretted leaving her education behind and returning home when her family had first called her. Shengfang returned home to find Lu Ran working on the workshop's accounts. He asked her to put the papers aside and focus on her studies so she could submit a request to return to university. But Lu Ran misunderstood his intention. She thought he no longer wanted her with him. Frustrated, she snapped that she would leave the accounts and focus on studying just so she could leave this place. Then she stormed off, leaving Shengfang confused and unsure why she was angry, when all he wanted was to support her education. A little later, Shengfang's younger brother arrived to visit. We learned that he had refused to move to the city and had stayed in the village with his wife and their mother. He had taken over Shengfang's old job, started supporting his family on his own, and despite everything his wife had done, he didn't leave her because, as he said, she was foolish but kind-hearted. The two brothers sat together, and Shengfang's brother asked him if he truly loved Lu Ran. Shengfang admitted that he did, deeply, but he said he wouldn't confess it to her yet, not before she finished her education. His brother warned him that if she went back to university, she might never return to him. But Shengfang said he didn't want to keep her beside him just for himself. He wanted her to finish her studies and achieve her dreams, and if she ever chose to come back, it would be because she wanted to, not because she was forced to. He said he would be happy as long as Lu Ran was happy. The next day, Shengfang went to the university himself to submit Lu Ran's return request. The next day, Shengfang went to Lu Ran and asked her to explain in detail everything a student needed to do in order to submit a re-enrollment request to the university. Lu Ran told him the process, and Shengfang, without telling her, went and submitted the official request for her to be readmitted. Later, he took Lu Ran and little Shanshan for a walk, and as they passed by the university, he encouraged Lu Ran to go inside, just to see if there was any chance for her to return. He told her to at least try. Lu Ran hesitated at first, but then smiled at him and agreed. Inside, she met one of her professors. To her surprise, he told her that she could return to her studies. She was confused, since she hadn't submitted any official request yet. The professor then explained that all she had to do was take a qualifying test in 2 weeks, and if she passed, she could resume her education. Lu Ran was astonished at how simple it all seemed, unaware that it was Shengfang who had submitted the request and spoken personally to the university director, telling him everything Lu Ran had been through and asking him to give her a second chance. Shengfang returned home expecting to find Lu Ran studying, but instead, he found her in the kitchen preparing food. She told him that she wanted to start looking for a good school, as the academic year was approaching and they needed to enroll Shanshan. Shengfang, clearly nervous, asked why she wasn't studying. He then told her that he would find her a small apartment near their house so she could live alone, focus on her studies, and stay away from the distractions of the home, the kitchen, and taking care of Shanshan. Lu Ran was shocked by his words and asked if he was trying to send her away. Shengfang quickly assured her that he had no intention of kicking her out, but he just wanted her to stop acting like a housewife and give her full attention to her education. Lu Ran was hurt by what Shengfang said, and the sadness was visible on her face during dinner. She went to her room and refused to speak to anyone. Inside, she told herself that maybe their marriage had never been real, but over time, she had grown used to it. She had come to see Shengfang and Shanshan as her true family. Still, if Shengfang no longer wanted her, she couldn't force him to keep her. The next day, Lu Ran began packing her things to leave the house. Shengfang was heartbroken seeing her go, but he believed it was for her own good. Lu Ran handed him all the money from the dowry. Shengfang became upset and refused to take it, but Lu Ran insisted, saying they were never truly married, so she had no right to keep it. Shengfang asked her to stop saying such things, but she remained firm and left. Shengfang followed her and asked to at least drive her home. She refused, saying she didn't want anything from him because she was angry that he had kicked her out. But Shengfang stood in front of her and told her he could never send her away from his life. He had only rented that small apartment for her so she could concentrate on her studies, nothing more. He pleaded with her to let him take her there. Lu Ran walked beside him silently, saying nothing. But when she reached the new place, it became clear how angry and sad she was. She didn't want to go back to school. What she truly wanted was to return home, prepare meals for Shengfang and Shanshan, and live the life she had gotten used to, just as she did every day. On the other side, when Luran's cousin found out about Chan, she went to his office, introduced herself, and told him that she was Luran's cousin. She claimed that Luran had sent her, explaining that Luran was being forced into staying with Xingfang and couldn't object to anything. She then tried to convince Chan to work with Hong Yang's workshop instead of Xingfang. That encounter left Chan believing that Luran's marriage was indeed unhappy. The next day, while walking down the street, Chan happened to spot Luran outside her new apartment. He greeted her and invited himself in for a cup of tea. While they were sitting, he told her how happy he was that she had left the house and gone back to her studies. Luran replied that it was only a temporary arrangement so she could concentrate better, but Chan bluntly told her that if she divorced Xingfang, her life would be beautiful again. Before Luran could respond, they heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, she found Xingfang and Shanshan standing there. Xingfang told her that Shanshan had missed her terribly. Chan stepped outside, and the moment Xingfang saw him, a mix of anger, jealousy, and heartbreak filled his eyes. Still, he didn't question why Chan was there. Instead, he told Shanshan it was time to leave, but the girl quickly ran into Luran's arms, clinging to her and begging to stay a little longer. Luran asked Xingfang if Shanshan could stay with her for a while and that he could come pick her up later. Xingfang replied that he was traveling for 3 days. Luran told him not to worry and that she would keep Shanshan with her. Xingfang then cast a fiery glance at Chan, assuming he was planning to come back inside. But before that could happen, Luran politely thanked Chan for his visit right in front of Xingfang and let him know she was leaving now with Shanshan. Embarrassed, Chan quietly left as well. Luran and Shanshan returned inside, and the little girl innocently told her that her father had been sad all day and hadn't smiled at all. Luran asked if that was true, and the girl confirmed it, saying that ever since Luran left, her father hadn't been the same. A warm feeling of joy filled Luran's heart. Meanwhile, Chan snuck into Xingfang's workshop and slipped some papers among his documents, papers containing incorrect specifications for large quantities of iron, hoping to cause Xingfang financial losses and take revenge on him. At the same time, Luran's cousin, who had been secretly plotting with Chan, went to Xingfang's brother and told him there was a collaboration happening between Xingfang's workshop and Hongyang's workshop to produce iron in a certain way. She advised him to go to Hongyang's workshop and act as Xingfang's representative to oversee the production. The brother followed her advice and joined Hongyang's team to supervise the work and produce the required batch. However, back at Xingfang's workshop, the same amount of iron was being produced, but with the wrong specifications. When Xingfang's brother later met him and mentioned the delivery, Xingfang was surprised. He explained that there was no collaboration whatsoever and that the project was solely his. But the brother said he had already delivered the first batch from Hongyang's workshop and had come to pick up the remaining quantity from Xingfang. Realizing something was wrong, Xingfang felt the pieces falling into place. His brother sensed it too and immediately ran to Luran to inform her of what had happened. Luran rushed with him to the workshop and asked Xingfang what was going on. He told her that all the quantities produced so far were made with incorrect specifications, different from what the company had requested. Luran urged him to give the correct specifications to the workers immediately and assured him that she would try to speak with the company. Together, they went to the company, only to find Hongyang already delivering the order. But due to his workers' lack of diligence, many errors were discovered in the batch, and the company refused to accept it. Luran stepped forward and pleaded with the manager to give her husband's workshop a chance. She explained that the delivery was supposed to happen the day before, but something had gone wrong, and she asked for just 1 day to provide the required quantity. After some hesitation, the manager agreed. At that moment, Xingfang arrived with the sample that his workers had produced. Luran handed it over to the manager, who was impressed by the quality of their work. She informed them that she would continue working with them, even if the delivery was delayed beyond the day she had granted them. After the manager left, Luran turned to Chan, her eyes burning with anger, and asked him what he thought he was doing. Xingfang, nearby, overheard the entire conversation. Chan told her he had done all this for her. Luran stared at him in disbelief. "For me? You harmed my husband's business for me." Chan insisted that he loved her, and he believed she was only with that uneducated laborer against her will. He claimed she was an educated university graduate who didn't belong in a life like this. Luran's anger flared. She told him he had no right to say that. She was a married woman, and she loved her husband deeply. Her place was beside him. She felt proud that he was her husband and declared that she would continue her education, but she would never leave Xingfang. She told Chan that nothing he said would ever convince her otherwise, and that his twisted thoughts would never come between her and her husband. Xingfang listened to every word with quiet joy. He didn't feel the need to intervene. Luran had defended both herself and their love with strength and confidence. When Luran left the building, Xingfang followed her, but she was upset with him. All of this, she said, happened because he had pushed her away from his home and his work. They walked back to the workshop in silence. Later, she returned to her home, and Xingfang followed, trying to speak with her. But she was still angry and closed the door. Xingfang stood in front of the window and apologized sincerely, swearing that he only sent her away so she could focus on her studies. But he admitted that he loved her and never wanted her out of his life. Luran was stunned. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. A deep happiness surged within her, but she didn't show it. Instead, she asked how he could say he loved her when he had pushed her out of his home and his work, leading to all these problems. Shengfang explained that he only did it because he wanted her to follow her dreams, not his. That's why he made that choice. Lu Ran looked at him and said she would forgive him, but on one condition. He must never push her away again, not from his life, and not from the workshop. And he must never carry the burden of work alone. Shengfang promised her he wouldn't. Lu Ran finally opened the door, and Shengfang stepped closer to her. He gently asked if he had heard her right. Did she really love him? She smiled and told him, "Of course I love you," but added that she wanted to start over with him from the very beginning. She wanted him to take her on dates, to be her boyfriend first, then to propose, and only after that, to marry her. Shengfang agreed immediately, telling her he would do anything she asked. Lu Ran then asked why he kept pushing her toward her studies like that. Wasn't he afraid she might leave him one day? Shengfang replied that he trusted her completely and was never afraid of losing her. After that, Shengfang tried to convince Lu Ran to come back home with him, but she refused. Deep inside, she was happy. This was her way of punishing him for what he had done. Shengfang, feeling disappointed and let down, realized that this was his consequence now, and he accepted it. Soon after, Lu Ran went to the university, took the test, and passed it successfully. The dean granted her permission to return and resume her studies. Later on, Lu Ran sat with Shengfang and his friend at work, who shared some troubling news. The company they worked for, which was part of a larger group, was planning to shut down one of the factories they collaborated with and lay off the workers. Shengfang was deeply concerned. If the factory closed, his own business and his workers would be affected too. The next day, as Lu Ran was leaving the university, she unexpectedly came across an elderly woman, the grandmother who owned the group of companies planning to take over the factory. The woman paused and stared at Lu Ran for a moment, her expression filled with surprise and emotion. Lu Ran bore a striking resemblance to the granddaughter she had lost years ago. In the evening, Lu Ran returned home with Shengfang, who gave her a simple pair of earrings as a gift, a gesture of apology for what he had done. She accepted his apology warmly, telling him she loved him and couldn't help forgiving him no matter what he did. Then she asked him to put the earrings on her himself, and added that she wouldn't give up until the plan to seize the factory was stopped. The next day, Lu Ran went to the manager of the small company affiliated with the grandmother's group. She explained that she didn't want the factory shut down, because aside from the workers, Shengfang's workshop would also suffer. When the grandmother found out about this, she gave orders for Shengfang and Lu Ran to take over the management of the factory and cancelled the entire plan to seize and demolish it. Shengfang and Lu Ran were overjoyed by this new opportunity. The following day, when Lu Ran went to the university, the dean offered her a scholarship to continue her studies abroad. It had been submitted by her professor, who believed in her excellence. He told her that once she returned to China, she would be able to work at the university. But Lu Ran firmly refused, though he asked her to take some time to think it over and keep the documents with her. When she got home and went in to shower, Shengfang happened to see the papers. He was struck with sadness. When Lu Ran came out and saw the papers in his hands, she apologized for not telling him sooner, explaining that it had just happened that day. Shengfang gave her a broken smile and told her that if she wanted to travel, he wouldn't stop her. But Lu Ran burst out in frustration, accusing him of giving up on her again, just like last time. She said she didn't want to leave him. Shengfang insisted that he could handle the factory on his own, but she told him she was more excited than him to manage it, and that she would stay, because he had helped her so much, and now it was her turn to support him. She told him she would never leave him, not as long as she lived. The next day, Shengfang and Lu Ran went to the factory and began working closely with the workers to restore it to its former state. Meanwhile, Shan was burning with anger, furious that Lu Ran had chosen to leave him for a poor, uneducated worker. He started plotting ways to sabotage their progress. On the other side, the grandmother's assistant arrived with the large pendant her granddaughter used to wear before she went missing. When she asked him where he got it, he told her he had found it in an old second-hand store and would ask the owner about its origin. After some investigation, he discovered that it had been sold by Lu Ran's family, who had fallen into financial hardship after their daughter returned pregnant, abandoned by Hong Yang, who had refused to acknowledge the child. She had believed she would marry a rich man. When the assistant came to ask about the pendant's original owner, Lu Ran's cousin spoke up, claiming she would pretend to be Lu Ran, confident no one would know the truth, especially if the girl's biological family turned out to be wealthy. It was then revealed that Lu Ran had actually been adopted and was not the biological daughter of the family she grew up with. Lu Ran's cousin then went to see the grandmother, who couldn't believe she had finally found her granddaughter after all those years. She asked her how she was and about her mother, whom she had taken with her after her son passed away. Lu Xian lied, saying her mother had died when she was little, and that she had been adopted by a kind family who also passed away. She claimed that the sister of the men who adopted her then took her in, and she had lived peacefully with her and her husband. She added that she had married Hong Yang and even become pregnant, but Lu Ran and her husband Shengfang had caused many problems for him at work, ruining his position. Now, they had no source of income, and her husband had left her. The grandmother grew furious with Lu Ran and Shengfang, while the young manager, who overheard everything, was skeptical and found it hard to believe. She knew Lu Ran and Shengfang well and didn't trust this girl's story. The grandmother turned against Shengfang and Lu Ran, handing over all the work to Hong Yang's workshop and cancelling the contract with Shengfang and Lu Ran. When Xingfang asked her why she was canceling the agreement when they had done nothing wrong, she told him it was her personal decision. But Lu Ran stood up angrily, pointing out that this violated the terms of their contract and that she couldn't do this. The grandmother snapped back that their contract didn't matter and there was nothing they could do about it. Xingfang and Lu Ran returned to the workers, confused and unsure of what to do next. The following day, Lu Ran suddenly collapsed. Xingfang rushed her to the hospital. When she woke up, she asked what was happening, and Xingfang told her that she was pushing herself too hard, working all day, studying, and barely eating. He warned her that she would destroy herself if she didn't slow down. But Lu Ran became angry and told him to stop asking her to give up her work. She said she would never quit until they got their rights back. Then, she pulled him close and kissed him, telling him to stop saying nonsense. Xingfang smiled and said he would keep saying it every day if it meant she'd keep kissing him. She replied that next time, she would slap him across the mouth. The next day, Lu Ran and Shan went to the young manager and told her everything that had happened. The manager explained that everything going wrong for them was likely because of the supposed granddaughter of the company chairwoman. Lu Ran asked in confusion, who is the chairwoman's granddaughter? The manager said she didn't know for sure, but she was either the wife or girlfriend of Hong Yang. Lu Ran was shocked and told her that this girl was actually Lu Xian, and that her parents were alive, and both her grandfather and grandmother were known and clearly identified. She then asked how Lu Xian managed to deceive the grandmother about her identity. The manager explained that the girl had brought a large pendant that once belonged to the grandmother's real granddaughter. Lu Ran suddenly remembered the pendant her father had given her before he passed away and asked the manager if she could bring it. The manager replied, of course. The next day, the young manager went to the grandmother with documents from the factory, revealing that the girl who claimed to be her granddaughter had been taking bribes and embezzling money from the company. At the same time, the grandmother's assistant arrived with the DNA test results she had requested, confirming that the girl was not related to her. Furious, the grandmother immediately fired both the girl and Hong Yang. The contract was restored, and work returned to Xingfang's factory and workshop. To celebrate the good news, the workers and friends all gathered at Xingfang's house. While Lu Ran was in the kitchen, she came back to find Xingfang's friends holding sparklers and fireworks. Xingfang stood in the middle, holding a bouquet of flowers. He got down on one knee and presented her with a ring, telling her that it was an heirloom passed down through the women of his family, from his great-grandmother, to his grandmother, to his mother, and now he was giving it to her. He officially proposed to her, saying that while the circumstances of their first meeting weren't ideal, she had become the most important person in his life, and he could never let her go. Lu Ran cried as she accepted the ring, and Xingfang kissed her joyfully while everyone clapped and cheered around them. Then Xingfang gently took her hand and led her through the city streets until they arrived at the house he had rented for her studies. He told her that this was the place where they first confessed their love for one another, and that's why he had bought it, so she could always come back to it whenever she wanted. Lu Ran smiled warmly and told him she didn't want to come here alone, she wanted to be with him always. Xingfang lifted her into his arms with joy and told her, then from now on, this is our place. And together, they stepped inside. After that, Xingfang and Lu Ran's business began to flourish beautifully, and they were both very happy. The next day, the manager summoned Lu Ran to her office and handed her the necklace. Lu Ran told her that the necklace belonged to her, but her aunt had claimed it was lost. Hong Yan explained that her aunt had sold it, and Lu Xian had impersonated her, pretending that the necklace was hers. She added that the necklace actually belonged to the grandmother's real granddaughter, and that she had already reported Lu Xian and Hong Yang to the police. Now, the grandmother wanted to meet Lu Ran. Although Lu Ran was happy that she would finally meet her real family, she was also angry and didn't want to see the woman who had once insulted her husband. Later, when she returned home, Xingfang gently encouraged her to go see her grandmother and assured her that he wouldn't be upset. But Lu Ran replied that she didn't want to meet the woman who had humiliated him. Still, she decided to attend the investors' celebration, since she and her husband were now the factory's directors. There, she saw her grandmother from across the room. The old woman stood frozen in place, overwhelmed with guilt and unable to speak. But Lu Ran approached her and calmly said she was willing to take a DNA test. The grandmother replied that she had always dreamed of this moment, of embracing her granddaughter, but she had made mistakes and now had to pay the price. Then she thanked Lu Ran for agreeing to take the test. The DNA test results came out, confirming that Lu Ran was indeed the grandmother's real granddaughter. Upon realizing the truth, the manager felt a mixture of happiness and sorrow. She was afraid that the grandmother might abandon her now after raising her for all those years to make up for the granddaughter she thought she had lost. But the grandmother reassured her that she would never abandon her, that she, too, was her granddaughter in every way. Still, the manager confessed that Lu Ran didn't want to come back to her. The shock caused the grandmother to faint, and she was rushed to the hospital. Crying, the manager went to Lu Ran and told her what had happened, begging her to forgive their grandmother and return to her. Lu Ran asked if she wasn't afraid of losing her position or everything she had after the real granddaughter had been found. The manager replied that she didn't care about any of that because their grandmother had raised her to be a good, kind person, and she would be happier knowing her grandmother had found her real granddaughter. She told Lu Ran that she saw her as a sister, not a rival trying to take her place. Lu Ran then told her that she had no interest in their grandmother's wealth or position. She and her husband earned their money through their own work, and she didn't want any inheritance or title. Later, Luran walked beside Qingfang, who noticed her sadness and asked her about it. She confessed that she had expected her grandmother to be kind and warm, not cruel and hurtful to the extent that she doubted if she was even human. She thought she might be some sort of wicked witch. But Qingfang gently reminded her that, no matter what, she was still her grandmother, and encouraged her to forgive. He then took her to the hospital himself. There, the grandmother apologized to Luran, admitting she had been wrong. When her niece deceived her, she was blinded by a need for revenge and truly believed that Luran and Qingfang were the villains. She never imagined Luran was the one who had been wronged. Tearfully, she asked for forgiveness. Luran cried as well, told her she forgave her, and asked her to stay strong, because she wanted her to be present at her and Qingfang's wedding very soon. Later, Luran returned home to find Qingfang's mother scolding little Shanshan, who was refusing to leave the house. Luran asked her why she was yelling at the girl, and the woman told her that she wanted to have a grandchild of her own. Shanshan couldn't stay with her and her husband forever. Luran calmly asked her to leave the room and said she would talk to the girl herself. When she sat beside her, the little girl confessed that she didn't want a baby brother because she was afraid she would lose their attention and love. Luran gently told her that she was her daughter, that just because she didn't give birth to her didn't mean she wasn't her real mother. She said that Shanshan was her and Qingfang's first daughter. To prove it, she gave her the necklace, telling her that it once belonged to her grandmother, who passed it down to her daughter-in-law, and eventually, it reached Luran. And now, Luran was giving it to her, because she truly believed she was her real daughter. Shanshan's eyes lit up with happiness, and she hugged Luran tightly. In the final scene, we see Luran and Qingfang's simple wedding taking place in the village. Even though they had become wealthy, they chose to return and celebrate their marriage among their small family. Surrounded by love and joy, they stood hand in hand, dreaming of the future they would build together, full of happiness and hope.